Welcome, everybody. I'm Sarah Cruz from Embrace Ayurveda, and today I have the honor and privilege to have a conversation with Deepa Kannan. Deepa is an Ayurvedic practitioner, allied functional medicine practitioner, mother to an amazing teenage boy, and more recently, an author of this beautiful book, How to Sleep Better. And so this is what we'll be talking about today is the release of Deepa's book, which is published by HarperCollins. So this is a great accomplishment in one's lifetime and great accomplishment and celebration for the world. So welcome, Deepa.
Thank you, Sarah. It's such a pleasure to be here and such an honor to be interviewed by you, whom I just struck a chord with the very first time that we met. And so I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you so much. Well, I feel like we have a lot of values in common and so many interests in common, which is why I wanted to talk with you in celebration of your book, but also acknowledging our dedication to the path of Ayurveda, yoga, functional medicine, and the healing of humanity. And one of the ways we can bring this information forth is through books. And I'm just curious to hear from you, Deepa, a bit about what inspired you to write this book and share it with the world. What really had you wake up one day and say, okay, I really need to do this. I'm excited to create this.
And I think Ayurveda, Sarah, if I may, because since you come from a world which is also very much intertwined with Eastern ancient wisdom, I can share the esoteric story here, which I'm always cautious to share in other places, which are more science-centric. But if I might share a little bit, because, Ayurveda is so closely intertwined with Jyotish. So, if I might share a peek into the backstory of how the book happened. So, basically, I have been teaching yoga for 25 years now, just touching 25 years. And about 7, 8 years ago, when I first certified in practicing nutrition and functional nutrition and bio-individual nutrition, I was thinking that there was so much emphasis placed upon sleep as a healing modality and how sleep plays a role in making any other protocol work. And I thought to myself that we're talking about the importance of sleep. We're in a space which is so personalized, but we're not really looking at everyone's individual differences in what's disrupting their sleep. So it would be nice to look at that. And I just made a passing remark to my husband. And at that point, we were going through a really difficult time. We had severe financial debt, and we had challenges with our son's health. And beyond his condition, it was in a very moment of crisis. And we had, well, one could put it as I felt at that time I'd been let down by people, but maybe on hindsight, it was just the universe doing some mischief with us. And so we were going through this really tough time. And when I made this passing remark, and I said to my husband one morning that, what if somebody were to look at sleep through the lens of these 10 indriyas we have in India? And he said, write a book. So I just said back just as flippantly that if I had been a millionaire's wife, I would have written a book. I don't have the time to be doing that. I think it's a luxury to be able to write a book. Maybe today I don't think that way, but it was so overwhelming, the amount of challenges that we were faced with. So I put it aside, and for a year, he kept asking me, when are you writing your book? And each time I said, when I'm a millionaire, I'll sit down to write my book. Then one fine day, he called me upstairs, and it was in this very room. And he said, "Look what's on my screen." And it was my Jyotish, my Vedic astrology chart. And he does dabble in astrology. So he said, "Read out this paragraph," and where it said that if you were an author, you would have global recognition. I mean, it was something that was so strange that I didn't even consider it seriously that moment, but that night I opened Facebook and I saw a post by Jessica Drummond, who everyone knows is integrative women's health. She coaches a lot of women in women's health. She had posted this little paragraph that I have 50 more pages to go writing my book, Jeremy, and would you keep me on track? So I went and clicked He Who's Jeremy. It was a group of self-published authors. So I said, okay, this has to be a sign because I saw this astrological chart and then I'm seeing this. I joined the group and then it was amazing. The group had been created 3 days before that. And there were a lot of authors, all of them writing books with the intention to self-publish them. So I finished the book, we motivated each other, and I was just about to hit format on Amazon Kindle for direct publishing and publish it. And then I said to my husband, I feel this is not the path for this book. So I just made this passing remark, and he said to me, just wait a bit. And he sent me a podcast with somebody where they spoke about self-publishing versus traditional publishing. And I said, oh my God, it's exactly what was in my mind. So I set up a call with this man called Mark Malatesta, and that's long story short. 1 year later, the book had been acquired by HarperCollins. So I think there was a lot of I would say it was a combination of effort and maybe some divine mystical play.
Yes, absolutely. And I get that your husband also really encouraged you along the way.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think many people in our circle have a book in their mind or in their heart, but getting it out of the mind, out of the heart onto paper is another story. That journey looks different for everyone. So I feel like the fact that you have completed that is so inspiring for your friends and colleagues to see that it is possible and there can be a lot of grace along the way.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm curious, since your book was published, how has the journey been for you in terms of reading it out loud publicly, showing up on podcast, hearing response from your readers? How has that been?
I think, Sarah, I keep finding myself having aha moments every time that I hear somebody shares something that the book did for them, or a review that looks at it from a new perspective. And I truly believe that the reader is 50% of the journey. So the reader does complete the cycle, and it's a cycle, it's a circle. And every reader has a new experience. Every reader finds something in the book which maybe I didn't set out to do so. But so therefore, I feel this journey is only beginning. And as more people read the book, they're going to have their own experiences. And it's going to do new things for everybody, maybe based upon where they are, maybe based upon what they are seeking from within. So I'm just one part of that link in that whole circle, and every reader contributes to completing that circle.
Absolutely. And I love what you shared. And I read this also in your book about you're sharing from the 10 Indriya perspective. And maybe people don't quite know what that means and how that relates to sleep. Could you share a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. And I think it's very important, Sarah, that most people, I do come across this a lot, that people are familiar with the five senses. They're not so familiar with the 10 indriyas. So very quickly, that in Eastern ancient texts, yoga and Ayurveda, the talk of the 10 indriyas are five jnana indriyas, which are are sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste, and the 5 karma indriyas, which are the rectum, which I've looked at as detoxification, the genitals, which I've looked at as urination, pleasure, and hormones, legs for the sense of locomotion, hands for our ability to grasp, and our mouth for our ability to speak. So I've used it as a framework to look into different systems in the body and how they might be contributing to sleep disruption, but also use them to provide non-invasive therapies which people can use from the comfort of their own homes, which is very important to me, that not everybody can always go away to whether it's an Ayurvedic center for treatment. I mean, it's not always possible. I think more so for women and mothers of young kids. And for me, especially with a child with a challenging condition, it wasn't easy to, as much as I wanted to go away every year for 6 weeks for a panchakarma, it didn't always happen because we need to show up. So therefore, for me, it's all about what do we do every single day? How do we empower ourselves every single day? So I've looked at the sense of sight as the connection to light and circadian rhythms. Sound, I've looked at as the connection to the adrenals. The adrenals are, if you'd like me to share, the adrenals are this cap-like gland on top of the kidney where the cortex produces cortisol and aldosterone. And we know that these are vital hormones. And cortisol, we talk a lot today about how high cortisol under stress can lead to inflammation. My understanding of adrenals came from my son who doesn't produce cortisol. So I had seen both these perspectives of a pathological lack of cortisol as well as how there's too much cortisol. So I've used sound as the sound is most impactful on adrenals. So anything that's loud and jarring, and of course, as a way to explore the adrenal connection to Vata, Dosha, and Ayurveda. Smell, I've looked at as when you can't smell if you're stuffy and maybe there's excess kapha, and how that can lead to a default mouth breathing in sleep, and maybe diagnoses such as sleep apnea, also things like hypersomnia and sleeping too much during the day. Touch, I've you looked at in 2 perspectives. One is the seesaw relationship between oxytocin and cortisol, that anything that helps release oxytocin can be beneficial in the reduction of cortisol, and also how histamine spikes, which again we're talking a lot about in functional medicine, that histamine intolerance and histamine elevation, inability to detoxify histamine can cause inflammation. But I've looked at the histamine and sleep connection, how we've got histamine receptors in our brain. So when we have high histamine and we're unable to detoxify it, let's say we have skin rashes, that skin can be an indicator or a barometer that histamine is also going to disrupt our sleep, because these histamine receptors in the brain, and when we have high histamine, it impacts how serotonin and GABA behave in the brain, and therefore doesn't allow us to calm, doesn't allow us to fall asleep. And then taste, of course, I've made this lots of connections between what we eat, how we eat, the vagus nerve, and what is vagal tone. So vagal tone, so vagus nerve is this nerve that connects the gut and the brain, and vagal tone is our ability to relax under pressure. So we can measure vagal tone by the difference between the inhale and the exhale, and usually the exhale is much longer than the inhale. It's a sign that we have high vagal tone, and under stress we can calm down easily. Then I've come into these 5 karma indriyas, where I've looked at the rectum as the connection to the digestion and detoxification. So how people with liver challenges take longer to fall asleep, they have disrupted sleep, and how we have so much of suboptimal liver function today, and the liver is the major organ of detoxification. Also, is part of the immune response as well. So if our liver is not at its best, it can definitely play a role in sleep disruption. In the genitals, I've looked at urination. So obviously men and women, prostate issues waking up men at night, or urinary incontinence waking up women at night, how all that can be sleep disruptive. And of course, the Ayurvedic connection that frequent urination is also an indicator of high vata dosha, and that again interplays with poor sleep. And of course, I've looked at that as a whole hormonal connection to sleep. So there's so many connections there, how women low progesterone can impact sleep. So cyclical insomnia based upon the phase of the menstrual cycle, or post-menopause, perimenopausal women where progesterone levels are dropping, and how that can be impactful on sleep. Then locomotion, I've looked it as a way to understand the right form of exercise to support sleep. And we know that there's something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which does play a role in slow wave sleep, which is the deeper parts of sleep. And the more sleep deprived we are, the more slow wave sleep that we require. And exercise does release BDNF. So exercise can be a positive contributor to sleep. However, the time of exercise matters. What is the nature of exercise? All of this can play so much of impact on sleep. And we're living in a world where there's so much of priority on rapid forms of exercise, be it HIIT workouts or be it overtraining, and all of this can be disruptive to sleep. So really to bring the highlight back to the fact that as long as we are over exercising and disrupting adrenal function, taking a melatonin supplement is not the answer. Really, we need to get back to the cause of what is disrupting the sleep, and we have so much power in our hands to do that. And the last two senses of action, grasping, I've looked at it as a connection to understand the pain and sleep link. So there are studies which show that the same areas of the brain that tell us we're in pain also play a role in sleep. So when someone has chronic pain issues, the answer of painkillers is not adequate, because unless we get to the root, we're not addressing sleep. So then we're just trying to fix the band-aid approach. And finally, speech. I've looked at the speech thyroid link and how thyroid and sleep have so many interconnections. Low thyroid causes restless leg syndrome, which is a sleep condition, even diagnosed by sleep physicians. But the root of that goes back to the high TSH levels. Also, thyroid plays a role in our temperature regulation. And for sleep, we need a low core body temperature to fall asleep. So there's so many myriad connections, also thyroid hormone and sex hormone. So I've tried to keep the book bringing in all the science, but keeping it practical and keeping it in a way that is very easy to relate to. I think only some rare people have told me it felt like a textbook, and then I questioned whether I had gone too far. But most of the reviews have been that I learned a lot from the book. I know I went way over time, Sarah. I'm so sorry.
No, it's very helpful to hear all of this, because I think that will inspire the listeners to be detective with their own health. And like you said, not everyone is able to step away for a healing or detox retreat. Maybe they're committed to their career, family, children. It's not the stage of life to go away and retreat and rejuvenate yet, but people can look at your book and again, be that detective and look into the root cause of why their sleep is disturbed. And as we know in Ayurveda, we're all such unique individuals. Maybe for somebody, it's an increase of vata affecting different indriyas, and maybe someone has elevated kapha and there's that mucus or sleep apnea, like you mentioned. And so we all will have a unique experience, but it can feel overwhelming because we may be hearing general recommendations in the media or in health literature. Do this tonic, take melatonin, take magnesium, do this. But, as you know so well, in Ayurveda, we have to ask the question, for whom is this practice or remedy beneficial? And so I think you're giving the readers a lot of valuable information to sift through and arrive at a few remedies that they can try on over time and ultimately find resolution with their deep and peaceful sleep, which truly is the foundation for the rest of our health. If our sleep is out of whack, then other things go out of whack as well. And so it's such an important piece. I'm really delighted that this is available for people. And Deepa, as I was reading through your book, there's many fantastic tips, but I'm wondering, as you've been hearing your readers get back in touch with you and give feedback, what are some of the tips that you keep hearing again and again? Like people are saying, this is really helping me that you shared this. This is the thing for me. I found out.
I think, Sarah, that last week I had a book launch in Bangalore here, and there were a lot of people. And post that, I saw there were about 5 or 6 posts on LinkedIn by people who had attended. And I was so inspired to see that they had picked out and they said that these are what really struck us. And repeatedly, it was the mention of Abhyanga as often as possible. So all the posts without exception spoke about how I had mentioned using Abhyanga as often as daily or several times a week as a game changer in sleep. So I was fascinated to see that, out of the entire presentation, they picked that out to highlight. So I think maybe it's reminding them also of maybe their grandparents, maybe times in India where these were all so intertwined into our life. And along the way, maybe these were forgotten. And now that's reminding them to embrace it, embrace Ayurveda as you have your tagline so beautifully.
Yes.
I think that if you ask me, and if you ask me if there's one thing from the entire book, I would say Abhyanga.
Oh, absolutely. This resonates so strongly with me as well. And in my practice, whenever I have clients with chronically elevated vata dosha, they always get the suggestion for self abhyanga. So it's absolutely one of my top 3 suggestions as well for the whole nervous system and how it impacts sleep. And I love to work with families with children and suggest to parents to give their child abhyanga to support their growth and nervous system development or sleep. Sometimes children are really affected with their sleep as well. And this self-oiling can do so much for children too.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of my non-negotiables to my son that, when I give in on a few areas of food, like maybe crossing some lines, after all, he's a teenager, my answer is always yes, but don't forget Abhyanga. So it's intertwined that he has to do Abhyanga. And I feel that maybe not often, and children can sometimes resist. Boy, teenagers definitely resist it. And it's important to somehow find a way to include that. And I'm sure at some point in time, they will themselves realize the value of having that as a part of their daily routine.
It's true. With teenagers, it can be interesting. My daughter, Amolia, she's 15 years old now. Her whole life, she's been exposed to Ayurvedic practices. Only in the last year has she come around and said, "Oh, Mom, I want to have my warm lemon water in the morning," or, "Oh, I want to add ghee to my food," or, "Let's not put too much sugar in that." It's coming from her, but I
Mm,
couldn't force it upon her. So I think demonstrating and being that example for our kids. And one day we hope they arrive at something.
yes. And
Yeah.
maybe it's a bit easier for girls than boys.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so delighted to observe your journey, Deepa. And I was first introduced to you with your Sleep Whisperer podcast. Is that still up and running and available to the public?
Yes, very much. It's still up and running. We just released this week will be episode 200.
Wow.
Uh, yes, so it's still running, but we release about 2 episodes every month.
Okay.
Earlier we do much more, but now I think we're just doing once every 2 weeks.
Yes. Fantastic. Well, I feel like, again, sleep is such a foundation. Whenever people come to me with hormone questions, help me with their hormones, I recommend looking at their sleep. Or if their digestion is off, look at your sleep. Or they're having anxiety, look at your sleep. So I just want to show your book again for everyone to consider. There you go. And your book, How to Sleep Better, is available everywhere books are sold for the most part, right?
Yes.
Yes, amazing. Well, Deepa, I wonder what is next for you in your offering to the world? What is ahead on your journey?
Well, Sarah, I mean, I'm somebody, that few months ago, somebody I was working with who helped me with my brand asked me to set goals, and I refused. I just believe so much in going with the flow, and I really think that there's something that guides us, and we get it's a combination of our own intuition, and I think at different times we get insights into where our path should go next. And so I just truly believe that let the answers come to you, and the path will be created for you. So right now I'm working on moving away from one-on-one counseling to more of, I've just released an ancient abhyanga master class, so just like videos on how to choose the oil, how to do abhyanga. So looking more at the same intersection of science and ancient wisdom as more offerings, which is more accessible to everybody. And who knows? We never know where life takes us. I think it's best to be the empty vessel and just let ourselves be guided, if
Oh,
that makes sense.
absolutely. And maybe in some circumstances, it's good to have a plan or a business plan, but also really along the way to trust our heart, to trust our inner knowing, and really trust that that next step will become clear when you get there. And I feel like that is providing a lot of encouragement and inspiration. We don't have to always know the whole plan, but keep referring internally, right?
Yeah, and I think just to clarify that, Sarah, that, sometimes I don't want people to think that it's just esoteric and we're just looking at astrological charts. It's not about that at all. Because, there's a beautiful verse in something called the Lalita Sahasranamam, a goddess chant, where there's Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti. And what that means is Icha is the intention. If you have the intention, jnana shakti, you will find the knowledge comes to you. And then when the knowledge comes to you, kriya shakti, so you have the action. So it's not that just we sit and wait for some divine force to move us. We absolutely need to show up every single day, and we need to keep putting in the effort, not getting frustrated about whatever's not happening, not getting over arrogant about what's happening, and we just show up every day. And I think then it combines with some greater force to move things along.
There's such deep wisdom in that, Deepa, and I appreciate how you drew that from the ancient text as well, because it truly is timeless wisdom that applies, I feel, more than ever these days.
I
Yes.
agree.
So, Deepa, your website is at ohahealth.com.
Yes.
Okay, so people can find out more about your book, what you're up to, your Abhyanga course. other trainings you're putting out. And do you have more book tour dates coming up as well, different locations you'll be sharing about your book?
Yes, I think so. We're just talking about that, and I was planning to do a virtual book launch actually yesterday, and then I moved it because I just wanted to finish a little bit more in India. But for sure, we are planning more cities in India. I do plan a virtual book launch because I definitely want to be connected to readers in US, UK, Canada, and everywhere else. So for sure, I'll want you there, and I will stay in touch. And of course, anyone wanting to can see all of this in any of my social media.
Fantastic. Well, I will put those links in the notes below. And anything else you'd love to share with us today? You just shared so much wisdom, Deepa, especially that last verse. But any closing words of wisdom that are in your heart today as we wrap up?
I think, Sarah, that I know life can be challenging for many, and I've had several times in my life where it feels as if I just want to succumb to defeat. And this has been a very long, arduous marriage from which I eventually came out. Birth of a child with this condition, on which still on days I feel is such a horrific condition that any moment they can die. There are times that you go out of town and then, he gets a fever and you start to panic because there's no emergency room. So for sure, I've seen all the worst of the situations, and I have felt like giving up many, many times. So just if anyone's going through any challenges in life, I would just like to say that um, deal with it. When you feel really down, cry, let it out, and you will find that when you stay on the path, that things happen for you. And I'll just close by sharing something I wrote in the acknowledgement section of my book, which is about me. And I said, we don't appreciate ourselves enough. So I want to appreciate myself, and staying steadfast with truth amidst arduously testing times has been the cornerstone of who I am. So I would just like to say that if you are going through any challenges, believe in yourself, love yourself, and you're here for a reason, and the universe will definitely show you what is your purpose on this earth at some point.
Thank you so much, Deepa. Really appreciate that. Well, it's been really a treat having you here with us today. I look forward to future conversations. And again, all the details will be in the notes below. Have a beautiful day, Deepa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah, and you've been so wonderful.
Thank you.